when you're starting out, like be like lean as possible. Especially until you start generating some revenue and some traction. You don't need to look fancy. You don't need to look good. You don't need the $4,000 stand-up desk to be productive. So scrappy. I think staying scrappy and not feeling that you need to impress anyone or anyone.
All right, folks, welcome back to You're Not Your ROAS, episode 23. We have, speaking of 23, the Michael Jordan of community building, the colossus of e-commerce, Andrew Youderian. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, I definitely don't deserve those titles, but appreciate the super kind intro. And I like the whale you got the background, man. You got some luxurious offices there with.
That's what
it doesn't look like it's moving though. It's a little. You might want to have someone check on that whale.
Get the intern to throw some more food in there because it probably could be a little more vibrant. But Andrew, I've been a long-time listener, first-time caller, so this is really awesome. I still have the podcast. You have such a wonderful podcast. I'm also a big fan of Bill and what you guys are doing over there. But e-commerce fuel is just incredible, and so we'll get into that. But first, I kind of want to read a little quote because you have a very unique kind of journey across your kind of entrepreneurship to now this community building / basically not necessarily consulting, cultivating was the verb I'm looking for, where you just really help people kind of get step changes in their business, which I think is just really not only noble, but honorable. And it's just really cool. So I'm going to read this quote real quick. All right. After a few years in the investment banking world, Andrew decided he'd had enough and to quit and start his first e-commerce business. He's been at it full-time ever since. Has subsequently started and sold numerous e-commerce stores, which have collectively generated over 7 million in sales. Andrew is particularly experienced with bootstrapping stores to 7 figures, business exits, SEO, and community building. How does an IB track, and when I say IB, investment banking, sorry folks, investment banking analyst go from that where you're just this heavy quant to like running this hugely entrepreneurial operation to very right brain community building? Can you take me down that pathway?
Yeah, I think anyone that I worked with at the bank probably would I don't know if they would describe me as a heavy quant. That's very generous. Maybe Excel, but definitely not heavy quant. Yeah, the journey was, and I'll try to stay not too much in the weeds, and you can dive in where you'd like. But banking for a couple of years was great in terms of learning, in terms of experience, in terms of getting learning how to work hard, attention to detail, rough in terms of quality of life. Quit after a couple of years, started an e-commerce business selling CB radios of all things in 2008. I'm dating myself here as a dinosaur. And then started another one selling some other things and kind of built a couple of stores, cut my teeth. And they weren't massive stores, especially by today's standards, but they allowed me to, kind of chart my own path and do some cool stuff and met all these interesting people doing similar things. And I've always loved bringing people together, whether it's, in a lot of different capacities, but I've always enjoyed building community and kind of had a little bit of a knack for that. And so I thought, hey, there's nobody talking about this. Let's bring everyone together. And so spent a year blogging just to build an audience and connect with people in the space, and ended up meeting a lot of great people, invite them into a community. And that has just since grown to what it is today. And so, these days focus exclusively on the community and leading our store owners and the team that we have there, as well as have a make a handful of small investments in the e-commerce space operationally, not like VC or anything, but
Sure.
See some interesting companies from our community that we partner up with. And that's kind of the jam these days. So that's the story.
I love it. And you kind of have the OG build in public post, right? Where you have that. It's a pretty much almost like a treatise of the build in public, where you went from calf to cow, where you talked about your business all the way up to the exit, which is pretty cool, man. And I mean, there's financials in there. I mean, it's pretty open the kimono stuff. I've yet to see somebody do it in such detail, but also come across so sincere. Like, it doesn't come across humble brag or anything like that. It's very useful. It's one of the things that I think is very all-encompassing of you, where, first of all, you have the best Instagram handle ever, by the way, the capitalist hippie. And I think that's a really good almost mental model for you, because that's where I get where you you have this, capitalistic bent to you where obviously you want to make money, you want to empower people to, gain resources to get further along their journey. But at the same time, you just have this huge empathetic slash humility to you that is very rarely seen in our space, to be fair.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Like, one of the mission of our community is to help 7 8 figure brands build incredible businesses and amazing lives, right? And
I love that.
for me, it's we all want to have great businesses. We all want to build something meaningful and financially do well, but there's a huge part that of I feel like balance has got to be like a dirty word. And I don't think you can have balance when you're starting something. Like, it's really difficult.
Totally
But
agree.
if you don't aspire to that, at least at the intermediate or at the very most kind of the tail end of that journey, or at least when you've been up and running for a while, like, I don't know, I think that's a good thing to aspire to. So it's yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
I love that. And I think a lot of times, myself included, um, people can think that the former of like accruing resources, making a bunch of money, will almost entitle you to the latter of a better life and a happier life and all this stuff where it's like, man, it is not the path at all. Where, I mean, if you just travel and you'll understand how disparate and like non-correlated economics are from happiness.
Hmm.
And it's incredible to see that. And I really think that, and that kind of also comes out in something else that we were talking offline about. I'm really jealous. I was born in Tucson. I don't know if you knew that. So
Oh, no, that's
yeah,
cool.
you split time between Tucson and Bozeman, two of really, really beautiful. Tucson has a national park butting up against it. And Bozeman is just, I mean, Montana's a gem. I mean, it is absolutely wonderful there. What drew you to, you also have an incredible camper van, by the way. But what drove that kind of, thirst for nature where you're pretty outdoorsy, you're pretty campy, like, that's again something that's very, or I have yet to bump up against entrepreneurs that are kind of into that nature thing, because quite frankly too, it can be a time sink, right? Like, or a time sink is a bad mental model for it, but it's a time consuming activity. Like when I go out and camp, you know what I mean, or backcountry, you're usually going 3 or 4 days. You're usually literally out of pocket, where it's not like, hey, don't call me,
Hmm.
but if you need to get a hold of me, hit the bat line up. This is like, hey, you're not going to see me. I'm off grid for 4 days. Well, how did you start cultivating that, especially with so much success at the beginning of your career?
Yeah, thanks. And again, I think you're overselling me here from success at the beginning of the career. I mean, it's I build some stores, but we're not talking about like bonobos here or anything. And it's so I just want to keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, a big part of it was I grew up, had a family that got outdoors. Grew up in Idaho, which was we had, we were an hour from the Tetons and at
Yeah.
Yellowstone, and had some great forests. And a big part of it too is my best friend growing up was like just his family was very into that. And so he kind of got me into skiing. I got him into mountain biking. Went to school in Montana, and so it just kind of grew over the years.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, I think I mean just kind of who I grew up with and where I grew up kind of facilitated that. So yeah, I just love getting out. It's such a great way to spend time with family or good
Yep.
friends. Like this upcoming week, I've got 3 or 4 buddies are coming to Tucson, and we're gonna take like a 5 day bike packing trip around the region. And it's just there's few better ways to like deeply connect with people and also
Yep.
kind of unplug. And yeah, so it's maybe a little bit of the answer to it.
I love that. What's a bike packing trip where you basically just take everything you need, almost like backpacking, but you bike?
Exactly, 100%. It's just
That's
like bumming
cool.
around on a bike. So I mean, you got to go super uber light because you can't really take a lot. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like backpacking on bikes is exactly what
Yeah.
it is. So
Yeah. Is
yeah.
this a road bike, mountain bike? What are you riding?
No, it's a gravel bike, so kind of a
Okay, yeah.
hybrid. Yeah,
Yeah,
slightly
yeah.
bigger tires. It's like a mountain bike and a road bike. Had a love child. That would be what this is. So
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. That is really cool. And I'll tell you what, man, you can cover a lot of mileage on bikes.
dude,
It's
yeah.
really, I have some friends that are into cycling, like, yeah, I did 50 miles. And you're just like, what? Like, oh, yeah, no problem. Cycling is really big out here in Austin, where there's a lot of rolling hills, a lot of kind of back roads where you're on the farms and stuff like that, where it's really pleasant. You can get away from that traffic. I love that.
That's one of the best things about bikepacking versus backpacking is, if you're backpacking, 15 20 mile day is a meaningful day. Let's say, I mean, you're tired at the end of that day.
Especially if you're
I
humping a
mean,
heavy pack. Like,
oh yeah,
you're
exactly.
wrecked. You're
And I mean,
wrecked.
you know, there's people that do 200 miles a day. They're more like endurance cyclists, but a 50 to 75 mile a day isn't crazy depending on the terrain, you know? You can get to the point where you can really see the landscape change quickly and you can cover a lot more ground and it's just cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think too, the most efficient animal is a human on a bike. I think if you take out machines, a condor, I believe, is the most energy efficient, but a human on the
Really?
bike is the most, and it blows the condor out of the water in terms of distance traveled versus energy input in.
I
So
had no idea.
it's,
No
yeah,
idea
yeah,
that was the
cycling.
case. That's
Yeah,
another
very,
reason to love bikes. I mean, they're such a cool invention. I don't know how long they've been around,
crazy.
but um, yeah, I mean, the fact you can hop on this thing and pedal your feet and it just sends you off like a rocket, like it's a pretty amazing invention.
Yeah, I love it. It's go physics. So you have again this kind of smattering of skills that have gotten you to this fairly high level. Do you have any like resources, frameworks, any things that you can kind of help people that might not be as far along on their journey to get to where you are?
Yeah, but in particular, do you have a certain area in terms of either business or community, or what area would you like me to focus on?
Whatever you prefer. I mean, I think community is a really great one, but again, like you keep downplaying it. But I mean, two exits is nothing to stub your nose at. Like there's pretty much anything that you want to get into. Like again, I love all of the capitalist hippie. So whatever you want to touch on.
Yeah, I think I'll take it from the approach of like if you're someone's coming out of school or they're just kind of starting out on their lives, like things I would try to, or like my son or daughters, what I would try to impart to them. I think a few different things. I think taking really smart risks is important.
I love that.
I think taking risks that have a lot of like asymmetric bets, not just like obviously like stuff like crypto comes to mind, and that's a good one to make if it was earlier, but more so along the lines of like what's the worst that's going to happen here. So the earlier you can take some of those asymmetric bets in your life when you have fewer responsibilities, the better, so before you have kids, even before potentially if you end up pairing up with someone, a spouse, like there's just so much benefit in investing some of your time and money, especially your time,
Yeah.
in trying to build something meaningful early on. I mean, the potential outcomes just so far outweigh the risk. If you do it and you succeed, you can change the trajectory of your life. If you do it and fail, you go get another job and they say, well, what happened here? And you say, hey, I took a risk, I raised some money, or I bootstrapped this and here I didn't work out, but here's what I learned. I don't know. To me, that speaks, I mean, that's still impressive, right? Like you're out there taking swings. So that would be one. I think living beneath your means, kind of cliche, but
Love
so
that.
important early on. It's easy to spend a ton of money on stuff, but the only reason I was able to start a business is because I had, some cash in the bank from not, from
Yeah.
banking like the majority of my checks for a couple of years and living like a college student, which I wasn't too far removed from one. I think that's important. I think the meta skill of learning to teach yourself things, like if
I love
you
that.
are not comfortable or willing to like be able to just immerse yourself on the Google machine, and just if you can't pick up skills and teach yourself stuff, like that would be the one of the first meta skills I would learn. I think on the community side and people, like people are it's amazing how people are willing to help you and be kind to you, if if you respect them, if you're appreciative of them, if you take the time to get to know them, if you have like long time horizons. I mean, people genuinely, everyone around the world is pretty much the same. They want to be valued and appreciated and respected and have
Absolutely.
community and be seen. And so, I think the soft skills are even so much more important than the academics or learning other things. Both are nice to have if you can pair them up, but yeah, if you're good with people, if you can, if you can interact well with people and appreciate them for the people that they are, and kind of, I mean, you can, anyone who's good with people will never starve,
It's a
and
great line.
people that are good with people often do incredibly well. So yeah, I touched on a lot of random things there, many of them
No, I
probably very
love that.
cliche, and I just probably lost you about 30% of your listeners, but that's what came to mind.
No, no, I love that. That's, I mean, ultimately, that's kind of how I think as well, where we need to turn up some more heat, get some more conflict. But that's really, I think, ultimately the path where accrue resources when you can, and then also put those resources to work, but have cap downside, unlimited upside type of bets. Those asymmetric bets that you're talking about, where it's, I'm gonna put 10K in here, and if this goes, it goes, and if it doesn't, I lost 10K. And making sure that that 10K is obviously not going to be, it's not going to scuttle the ship. Like, I don't think you should make those bets where it's like, if you lose this, it's everything or nothing. Like, those all or nothing bets, I think, can be challenging. And then also, lifestyle creeps are a real thing, right? Like, understanding what your long-term goals are, and if not, you can start to really bleed away any kind of assets that you could start to accrue on stuff that's really superfluous, right? It's not really going to drive the needle. And in terms of the meta skill, I couldn't agree with you more. Where um, I like half-heartedly joke, but half-heartedly cry about, like, I think this is the best time to be exceptional, worst time to be average. Where when you were average, back in the day, you just kind of clock in, clock out. You do what you're told. You have a wife or a partner. You have a house. You have, like, everything's fine. Whereas now, it's really challenging to just kind of do the thing. Versus, if you do want to learn anything, man, I mean, YouTube is free and there is incredibly valuable content. And then, to your point, as you start to build these skills, you can start to hone in on people that are also experts, or driving forward in the path that you want to. And if you can reach out to them in an eloquent, respectful, but also actionable way, because I think a lot of times people, myself included, if I get a question that is ambiguous, or if the cognitive load is too high, it's not that I don't want to answer, it's just I can't. Versus, if there's a really clear ask, it comes across respectful.
Yeah.
I think everybody that I've encountered always wants to pay it forward, and mostly it's either the ask wasn't clear, or it came across entitled or something like that, that just kind of rubbed that person the wrong way. And I think if you steer clear of those two things, and you can get help from so many people, and it's crazy how high that goes, because a lot of times those people were helped out too, and so it starts to build this symbiotic circle of karma in a way.
Yeah, I think another skill that someone who's starting out is like outreach. Like, how do you reach out to people? And it's part psychology, it's part sales, it's part brevity. I think being able to write good cold emails to very targeted folks that you feel like you can offer something to, and hopefully they can help you with something. And understanding, like, how is that? How can I approach someone in a way that is not just like me asking for, hey, I'd never met you before, but I'd love, could you please spend 2 hours of your time talking to me about something, and not being respectful of the fact that, oh, they probably got another 20 of these type of requests in their email in this week, right? Like, so the same way that, like, you would like to, when you make introductions to people, you want to make them mutually beneficial. You don't want to, if you go through your network and you just introduce people to people that, there's not going to be mutual benefit. You're going to burn some, people are just going to be less enthusiastic when you introduce them in the future. So the art of the mutually beneficial introduction, and by extension, the art of the mutually beneficial outreach, cold outreach email, like, they're hard to do, and you got to be very laser focused on who it makes sense. But I think about some of the things we've done in business in terms of connecting with people, or having partners or business partnerships, or whatever it is. And, like, it's amazing what cold emails can do when they are thought through really well.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. So I have a kind of a mental model for that called social capital. And so if you don't have the social capital yet with that person, you can't start withdrawing from their bank account. And so there has to be some way that, to your point, I love the mutually beneficial, where at the end of the day, like, people want to help themselves. And so if you can give them a way to not only help themselves, but also feel good about it because they're helping you, like, that's the path, man, where these people are, this is, there's definitely altruism, but at the same time, I'm a much bigger believer in incentives. And so, like, if there's a way that you can, have a clear incentive for why they should help you, and not in, like, the cheesy, gross, like, transactional way, but more so, again, at that meta level, and understanding, like, hey, man, I've been here before, you've been here, blah, blah, blah. Is there something that we could, hook up on? I'm more than happy to help you. I see that your website is a little dated. Would you mind if I took a stab at updating it for you for free, or whatever? Like, again, you don't have to go to these extremes, but just in that kind of pathway of that mutually beneficial interaction, I think can really do a lot of dividends. And to your point too, those meta skills of just understanding, I also have this kind of weird thesis that everybody has a question they're looking to answer. And then the closer you can get to what that person's question is, the easier it is going to be to build the incentives around that question that will enhance the fidelity of your communication with them.
So what's the question you're trying to answer? We're going to test your thesis here.
For me, my biggest question right now is how can I become a better executive? That's my big, because I came from this individual contributor role where I was always just this 10Xer. When I was running my agency, I was literally me, basically, as the big brain. And then I had a few like kind of permalancers, is what I call them, where they would be kind of more hands for me. But at the same time, I was basically running nobody. Ultimately, I was just running clients and then producing results, where now I'm in this executive role where there's just totally different value vectors at the executive role than there is in an individual contributor, where a lot of times like my days are meetings, or my days are understanding the political alliances I need to build, or my days are, hey, should we put in a conference? Where do we put the conference? Who do we invite to the conference? Like there's all these things that aren't necessarily like quote unquote actionables or deliverables that usually my whole life revolved around of like, hey, do
Yeah.
I get X done or Y done? And there's just these, it's just different. And it's something that I've talked about on a few other podcasts, but I kind of crap on people because I used to, since I came from kind of a technical background, I thought that your worth was basically 100% correlated to your technical proficiency. And now I'm realizing like high level managers, which are different than executives, but both are just insanely hard to get, insanely hard to hire, and incredibly valuable. Like somebody that can hire up a team, skill up a team, and get everybody rowing in the same direction, man, that is just such a now, like I understand executive compensation a lot more, where before I kind of again had a bit of a negative connotation to that, because is that kind of like middle manager kind of stuff where it totally exists, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really strong. I mean, a manager in a way is just a really, really high level PM or product manager, in my opinion. And so that's different than an executive, where an executive, again, is that you're talking about a product manager, you're talking about a political maneuver, you're talking about somebody that understands strategy, or somebody that understands the economics of the business. How am I driving these things forward? Not only that, you're also managing a team of PMs essentially. So all my direct reports are essentially PMs where they're running their teams. And so this stuff just evolves. And one of the things, and I'll quit rambling, but the biggest kind of shock to me was I was a very big deep work guy. Like I hated people having contact with me. Like I hate meetings. I hate all this stuff. Like I want to get something, get my teeth in it, and have 4 hours, 5 hours to really drill down in it. And that's just not a reality in an executive role, where like you're a delegator. Like you basically synthesize information and then you put the best people on it, which has been, a very big change from coming from an IC, where it's like, just go lock me in a room and I come back with a brilliant solution.
Yeah. How much do you miss that? Because
A lot.
yeah, I do too, man. Like it's same thing. Really miss being able to go deep on stuff. And on the e-commerce side too, like for a long time, the community's grown to a point where kind of have to decide, like I could either run a great store, e-commerce store, or I could run what we're trying to make is a world-class community for store owners. It's really hard to do both, but for a while I struggled with like, how can I lead this community if I'm not like in the trenches every day? What I kind of realized was like, you can't have it both ways. Like you can't do both on a longer term horizon. And it's much more valuable for me to be able to run the community both for myself and hopefully for the members, as it is for me to know the intricacies of like, Facebook ads or TikTok or attribution. Not that I shouldn't know those at a high level and be familiar with how everything's interlinked, but yeah, I feel you on that, man. And it's tough. I miss uh, really miss the craftsman level, like going deep and sinking your teeth into something and really understanding it deeply and feeling like you're world class, or at least just exceptionally, maybe world class is too strong, exceptionally good at something, or at least very competent at something. Because yeah, in my role, I'm guessing it sounds like yours a little bit. There's definitely more of a lot higher level, like just you have to wear a lot of different hats, not in roles, but just you can't go as deep and you can't be as expert in one field as you used to be able to.
Perfectly put. It's, I mean, because a lot of that stuff is just a function of time, and time is just when we get to the levels that me and you are at, time is just so expensive that you have to, figure it out. To your point as well. So I have a fiance, you have a family. You just have a different, priority stack, where when I'm 25, just running and gunning and who cares? I'm trying to make all the money in the world, blah, blah, blah. And so, your preferences change, your decision set changes. There's all these things that you have to start balancing out. And then furthermore, to your point with kids, like, you have little ones that are like relying upon you for their being, where it's like not only financial, but making sure that they grow up well and all this stuff, and you show up in their life. And so that's been a challenge where at an early stage startup, I haven't been showing up the best in my personal relationships just because I've been working so much. And now I'm, better. We're got some people under me now and stuff. So it's working out. But yeah, that's definitely been a challenge in the role, but it is what it is. Sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. Okay, Andrew, let's round out this section. What is the nicest thing someone has done for you?
Oh, the nicest thing? Wow. I'd have to say my parents raising me as a father myself. Like the amount of time and energy and money and frustration and blood and tears and also joy and happiness that come along with the territory. It is I'd have to say my parents raising me, like probably hands down. So
I love that. What a great answer. Were you an ornery kid?
yeah, my mom would say that. I was, yeah, I have, there was one incident where I went to the doctor and I didn't like being in there and I didn't like what happened. So the nurse told me I couldn't leave the room. So I walked up to her, kicked her in the shin and ran out and escaped. And like, they couldn't find me in the doctor's office for like 5 minutes. I was like escaped inmate, right? So there's a lot of stories like that growing up for me. So,
oh man, I love that. All right, Andrew, you made it through the first segment. Incredible. Let's jump into the value add segment. This is why the people bought the ticket. Okay. First question. So for people that don't know, Andrew runs a fantastic community called E-commerce Fuel. It's for fairly bigger Shopify stores or just e-commerce stores in general. Majority of people are on Shopify, but there's a smattering of different platforms in there. What are the best parts, and then what are the hardest parts of running that community?
yeah, good question. Some of the best parts are watching the full arc of people's journeys. I mean, we've been around for 9 years now, coming up on 9 years, crazy. And some of the companies I saw start just as seedlings, because originally I think our revenue requirement was like 25K, like, or 50K. Like you could be very young and
Yeah.
to start out. Now we've bumped that up, but and seeing some of those companies like grow into 8-figure brands and have like life-changing exits, and that's been cool. Getting to know some of the people over the arc of that like 7 or 8 years has also been equally cool. As just the friendships, the connections, the people that yeah, you've just gotten to know over 8 years is because we do annual events, and so that's probably one of the coolest parts. One of the hardest parts I would say is, I'd say two things. One, events. We're really ramping up and doubling down on events this last year. And we do that because they're powerful, because it's how you build trust and rapport, and nothing beats in person. It's the glue that holds the community together, but they're just tough. They're a lot of work. They take a ton of planning. They're expensive.
Yep.
Big shout out to our director of events, Audrey Smith. She does a really good job with that. And yeah, so I'd say that's one of the hard things. The other thing I think is like walking the line well between free speech, letting people kind of a laissez-faire attitude,
Yeah.
and understanding that if you want to build something great, a community not excluded, you need to have a clear vision for that and be able to change things when they need to be changed. So we have, like if people, there's anytime you get a bunch of 1,000, 1,100 humans in an online space together, even ones as fantastic as the one as our members, you have issues, you have conflicts, you have to deal with things. So yeah, it's kind of the human side of how do you moderate a community well. And happy to go into that a little bit more if you want, but to save everyone unless it's interesting. Yeah, that's the trickier side. How do you moderate well? How do you set up rules that let you create the vision and realize the vision without being too much of an overlord? Because really the community is about people talking and discussing and connecting. So.
Oh, I love that. And I'm very much so in that kind of laissez-faire attitude, but at the same time, we're running a tiny community called Narwhal Nation. It's just our triple whalers. So I actually would love to see, or if you want to give me a little more color into the moderation, because that is definitely like, we're 400 people now or something, so not even close to where you guys are at. But it is, you can start to see how having things up front and understanding how to set norms can be so helpful to circumvent some of these challenges when you start to get more and more people in a community. Because one thing that a community abhors is a vacuum, and they'll just figure it out. And sometimes they figure it out in a way that might not be advantageous to everybody. That can then, it can you can scuttle a community really quickly if you don't have some guardrails in place. Is what I've found. Is that kind of similar to what your experience has been as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think the big things I would say for anyone thinking about starting a community or moderating a community, first and foremost, like be very clear and unapologetic about who it's for and who it's not.
I love
Um,
that. I
it's
love
it's
that.
not that people inside or out are better or worse, but like community is by definition a group of people that have shared experiences, bonds, and connections. And it's so much harder to do that if you have people from all different stages of life or business. And so yeah,
I
be
love
very
that.
clear about who is in us, who is out, and be as respectful as possible when you have to decline people, but don't, I mean, realize if you don't, you're sacrificing the strength of your community. I think on the moderation front, um, like our two big principles for moderating a community are respect and reciprocity.
I
So
love that.
we just don't put up with people being rude. Like if people get in and start demeaning people, or are disrespectful, or just or vulgar, uh, we'll give them one warning. Depending if it's really bad, we'll just boot them out. If
Yeah.
it's not egregious or borderline, we'll give them one warning. And if they keep doing it a second time, we usually give them the boot. Few things are as satisfying as removing someone who's a terrible fit for a community. Like it just feels amazing. And it's a little scary sometimes, especially the first few times you do it. But you can either have some people get upset with you, or you can protect the integrity of your community. The other thing is reciprocity. Like even if you have 150 people in a community or 200 or 300 or 1,000, there's kind of a natural there's a natural life cycle. People come in, they're super active, and then they kind of wane, and that's
Mhm.
just kind of how most things go. But it's really important that we don't have people come in and just milk the community for all of its knowledge without contributing back. So we
I
have
love that.
a couple of things. If anyone comes in, they're required to do a case study in the first 30 days to maintain their membership, where they share something about their experience. On an ongoing basis, if people ask, we have some kind of internal metrics and tech and mechanisms that if people ask a ton of questions and they're not helping out on other people's questions, we flag them and pretty much turn off their ability to be able to ask new questions until they go and
How
add value to more
cool.
people. So we try to moderate that. And again, it leads to some uncomfortable discussions when you're like, hey, we love having you here, but you need to be a little like, this is not just your own personal Q&A session. Like, this is a community to engage, but you need to make sure you're adding value too. We even, in some instances, depending on the month, will remove people that are inactive,
Mm.
just to try to have more of a cohesive group that is active. So those are kind of some of the things that come to mind.
Oh, I'm gonna steal all of that. Now, question: do you have any community mods? Like, do you have anybody from the community that helps moderate the group, or is it
We
just
do,
everybody e-commerce fuel?
yeah, no, we do. We have 3 or 4 different mods.
That's so
We
cool.
have a full time community manager. His name's Patrick. He's
How
exceptionally
cool.
good at his job. So shout out to Patrick. Um, yeah, it's so we do. We don't have a ton.
Yeah.
I would be very. We didn't institute mods outside of myself and Patrick, or our full, whoever the community manager was at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Non-staff mods until probably 5 to 6 years into the
Oh, I
community.
love that.
Um, Making someone a moderator is a big deal. You're kind of
Yeah.
giving them the keys to the kingdom, so you want to make sure that they've got that you know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's I mean that's so gold. How do you see? So I loved your 2022 predictions. So that was one of my favorite podcasts. So I want you to kind of pontificate a little bit for us and our listeners. How do you see the next 2 to 3 years kind of unfolding in the e-commerce space?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, and some of these ideas are my own. A lot of them I've kind of brought in from a lot of other sources too. So none of this is. I'm not claiming all of this is 100% proprietary to my own brain. So um, I think I think we're going to see. I think it's going to be continue to be difficult. Like 2021 was probably the hardest year in e-commerce history for most established brands, I would bet.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if 2022 is going to be quite that hard, but I think it's going to remain difficult. I think the way people, I think we're going to have, it's going to be much harder to grow big businesses when you think about scaling up a business to, 100 to 300 million dollars. A lot of these like big DTC business scales it's going to be harder to build big businesses because advertising's got more expensive because there's more competition. I think the businesses that are built and survive and thrive will probably be a little smaller. They'll be focused more on repeat business. They'll be focused
Mm.
more uh, on really thriving communities. I think community will play a larger role going forward. Um, so I think it'll be harder to build big businesses, but the businesses that are built and do exist will also be businesses that just yeah, they're more durable, that they last
Mhm.
longer. I also think margin is going to be increasingly important. Like I think the last 5, 6, 7+ years, you've been able to maybe grow an e-commerce business well if you have 40 or 45% or 50% gross margins. I think that threshold is going to just probably go up to go up significantly because yeah, the margin makes everything easier. And in an environment where everything's getting more difficult, if you've got that extra margin and you can spend more for your team for acquisition to make customer experience great for people, I think that's going to be another big, massive differentiator is how well people take care of their customers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are kind of some of the things I see shaping out and shaking out on the building e-commerce businesses front for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's super spot on. Is there any verticals that excite you in particular? So I'm the same with that kind of subscription. So athletic greens is really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm still iffy on if that model works in terms of just athletic greens because it is a hard sell in the sense of its health. I'm not really bullish on people spending on their health. I think people care about their dogs and their kids more than themselves. But
That's probably
but
true.
so yeah, I'm longer chewy than I am athletic greens. But at the same time, it has been interesting to see them grow this kind of, I mean, pretty mundane product in terms of greens powder to this DTC powerhouse. Um, but do you see any like retail or wholesaling becoming more and more a part of an e-commerce's like D2C? Well, obviously it wouldn't be D2C in that sense, but like if you have a D2C brand and then you start to add on a wholesale component or retail component, do you think that's going to be something that people approach more, or do you think that just adds more complexity? And to your point, the margins are worse, right? Because you're giving them some sauce because they're going to make it up in volume, the old cliche. Do you think that's going to happen at all?
I think the latter. The people I've talked to that do wholesale, like obviously some people do wholesale, it works great and it's a huge part of their
Yeah.
business. But I think in general, you're doing wholesale, you're thinking like, okay, I gotta, you know, it's more logistics, more complexity. I'm giving up margin. In some instances, maybe I have to give terms to people so they don't pay me
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, the cash
Um, it-
conversion cycle.
yeah, like if you're on Amazon and you're selling on Amazon, and then all of a sudden, other people you wholesale to are selling on Amazon against you. Anyone who's doing wholesale, I would guess, if you're not, you should definitely, like depends on the specifics, but I'd be very strongly inclined to only wholesale to people who aren't going to list against you on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think if I had to bet, I would say the trend for wholesale is probably going to go down, especially for smaller brands. So again, your mileage may vary. Some people it works really well for, but in general, if I had a business, that wholesale would not be where I would be looking.
Yeah, I love that. I really like the idea that you're talking about community. I think it's kind of, what's old is new again, where you're seeing a lot of these first principles come back of like treat your customer well, have a retention play in place. Don't try and acquire, ultimately customers. You want to build evangelists, and like, are you giving these people value to then tell their spouse or their significant other, or their friends why they're so smart? Like, are you giving them these stories that why their life is better because of your product? I think is really we kind of swung to your point in that like bull market of Facebook ads, like the Cambrian explosion of the news feed was just like, I mean, mind blowing. You just put money in this machine and you just shake it out and all this money comes out and you're like, this is great. And I think that kind of fostered a generation, and again, no judgment, but a generation that really didn't care about the P&L because there's just so much money. Like when
Yeah.
when the top line was so big, who cares? Like operational expenses doesn't matter. Like so much was making it down to the net profit level that there was no real reason to understand efficiency or really care about it, quite frankly, because it's just cocaine and champagne. Like everybody's just making money. And so I think now that's something that has been, or at least that's what I've seen is like profit is no longer a dirty word where it's like, oh, wow, like, yeah, I want to start this business. And who cares if I'm making 100 million a year, if I'm taking home 500K, or even worse, there's some of these businesses that are kind of quote unquote profitable, but they can't extract any money out of the business because it's already rolling into the next round of inventory or something like that. So you have this kind of quote unquote profitability, but there's no way to get money out of the business, or else you'll scuttle your business. And so I think you're spot on there, where there's probably going to be it's going to be harder to build those behemoth businesses, but the smaller ones that do make it are going to be way more robust in the long run.
Yeah. And also, I mean, for what you guys are doing, there's a guy, a really smart guy, Sean Frank over at Ridge Wallets. And
Yeah. Ridge does.
yeah, he's
wicked
just
smart.
a wicked smart guy. And so I'm stealing this kind of from him, but just the importance of, I mean, what you guys do, like Triple Whale having better attribution with face, whether it's for Facebook or all your channels. If you can track that better and know what channels are performing well in a world where Facebook's more opaque, where Google Analytics has been opaque for a while in some regards. It's just, you'll be able to spend more, you'll be able to see what's working, what's not, and ramp up accordingly. So I think that's another big part of also brands that aren't going to be able to scale with paid. Like, they just need to build their own little source of intelligence that lets them do that. So
Yeah, I love that. And that's definitely, to be fair, like, I think one of the things that is a huge function of success for business is timing. And like, even if you have a great product, if the timing's off, it can be challenging to make the business work. And I think that's one of the things that we've really kind of backed into, where the timing is just perfect. Plus, people are much more amenable to change when stuff's broken.
yeah,
When things are
yes.
going good, I'm not going to adopt a new tech stack. My analytics are fine.
Yes.
I'm printing money. But when things aren't going well, they're much more excitement to find new platforms to drive more revenues for them. Okay, one more question, and then we'll get into the rapid fire. What is or actually, let's do this one. What's one of the kind of biggest mistakes you see when people are starting or founding a business, that kind of a big pitfall that could probably be sidestepped if people listen to this podcast?
Oh, that's a good question. I think maybe one of the biggest ones is trying to think through, like, are you ready to go the distance on it? That old quote, like, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5, right? Like, I think that's a big one. I think people not expecting how hard it is. Like, people tell you it's just, and you forget, even as entrepreneurs, I think you forget how, you think you work hard like 5 or 6 years in your career. I think if you went back, it's kind of like having kids, right? Like, you have a 6-year-old and it's wonderful, but it's also a lot of work. But then if you went back to, like, when they were 6 months old, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we survived this. This is craziness. So I think that's probably one of the big ones. Unnecessary expenses is I would probably say another one.
that.
Like, when you're starting out, like, be lean, like lean as possible. Especially until you start generating some revenue and some traction. You don't need to look fancy. You don't need to look good. You don't need the $4,000 stand-up desk to be productive. So scrappy. I think staying scrappy and not feeling that you need to impress anyone early on, plus taking the right time horizons. Those would be the 2 things that come to mind for me.
Oh, that's brilliant. You're absolutely living up to the bill, Andrew. I think man, I couldn't agree more. The understanding of your capabilities, and then the closer you can get to the time chunks of what it'll take, is huge. And then also, again, keeping that burn low is huge. I mean, cash flow is king. It sounds cheesy, it sounds cliche, but man, things are so much easier when you have cash versus when you don't. And a lot of times there's kind of what is that, Murphy's Law, where the worst stuff will happen when you're the most vulnerable. And that is definitely how I see it. So I love that. I think it's exactly spot on. All right, my man, this has been so incredible, and I love you, but it's rapid fire time. So I got to put on my mean guy hat, and we're going to jump in. Are you ready?
So I have a quick question on the rapid fire.
Yeah.
Do you edit this down? Do I have time to think about something for 30 seconds without losing half the audience? Or is this like a straight cut? People are going to see me contemplate.
Totally. This is your world, and I'm just living in it. If you want to pontificate and give nuance to why, it's totally up to you. Everybody does it different. So just let them run.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So if you want to pontificate and go in, you can. If not, you can just move on to the next one.
Sweet.
Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Bozeman, Overrated, underrated.
Ooh, I'm not gonna say underrated. I would say underrated in the summer, overrated in the winter.
Well, I love that. So are you a cold guy then? So you're not a cold guy. Is that when
No,
do you snowbird in Arizona?
yeah, I love the sun. Love the sun. So
Same. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I love that. Raising money, overrated or underrated?
in general, overrated. I would say. I
I
think
love
I think
that.
there's a. I think you have this selection bias where you see people who raise money, and well, I'm gonna hedge this in just a second. You see people who raise money have amazing outcomes, and you think I should raise money. I think there's a lot of instances where people raise money, they give up a lot of the company. They get big liquidation preferences. So even if they have an exit, maybe they don't even see any money because the investors get paid back first. So I would say in general, overrated. That being said, I think if you have the opportunity with the valuations right now and you've got a business and you can, you know, uh, yeah, if you have a business that's growing and you can raise a couple $1,000,000 and give up a tiny piece of your company at a crazy valuation, I think that could also make a lot of sense too. So yeah.
I love that. And I think too that people underestimate and overestimate, to be fair, the importance of certain people on your cap table where,
Hmm.
people can bring more than capital to the business, which can be really helpful. But at the same time, you can get really lazy VCs where it's like, we're going to give you the moon. And then basically the wire hits and then the number's blocked.
Yeah, totally. And I guess I should caveat that too with like, totally depends on your end goal, right? Like
It's a
if you want
great
to be in
point.
complete control of your
Very
time
good
and
point.
you're cool with taking longer and it's more important for you to make, enough to support your family and a comfortable life and you don't need the jet and you don't need like, the bling bling and that's not important to you. Yeah, don't raise money. Like you got more people to be accountable to. But if you really are looking to build something great and you want to be able to hire top talent at day one and like acceleration is what's important to you and you need to get going quickly, like, yeah, raise money. So I guess, yeah, I kind of pooped all over it, but it depends on what you want to. So,
I love that. Reverse auctions. You exited one of your business with a reverse auction. Overrated, underrated.
uh, I'll say underrated only
Oh,
because,
okay.
yeah, it worked out reasonably well. And to be fair, like I did that partially because I wanted to sell that business, but I also partially did it as a publicity stunt because I figured like if I do this and market it, it can get a lot of traction. And to be fair, it was, it was on Hacker News back. I don't know if Hacker News is still a big thing or not,
Yeah, I
but
still think, yeah.
it was high up on Hacker News for at least a day. The site was blowing up. I still, even to this day, I have people that are like, "Oh, are you the dude that sold your business with a reverse auction?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." So it was in my case, it was underrated. It worked out well. So,
Oh man, I love that. So I know you're a big fitness guru, big cyclist. Strava, overrated, underrated.
ooh, man, I feel like I'm hedging on all these. Uh, I'll go underrated. It has
Oh
some
wow, okay,
pros. Excuse me, overrated. Overrated.
okay,
Has
okay.
some pro. It has some pros. It's nice to be able to track your time. Probably one of the nice things too is like, it's nice to be able to see what your buddies are up to.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those good friends are coming in for that biking trip. Like, it's cool to watch and see what adventures they're going on and be able to talk to them about it. And if they're training a lot, and I'm like, oh dude, I'm doing nothing. I'm gonna get destroyed on this bike trip. I gotta get
You
going.
see their
That's nice.
pace.
Yeah, see their pace. Yeah. Um, I think sometimes it has turned like definitely overrated according to like hikers. The number of hikers
Mhm.
probably been blown off of trails because people are trying to like king of the mountain or beat their last Strava segment time. I think Strava has probably done more to give mountain bikers a bad name in the mountains than probably anything else, alcohol included.
That's
But
saying something.
yeah, the other thing too, I think sometimes you can be like, and I've been guilty of this too. Like you go out on a ride and you're like, you have fun on the ride, but what you're really excited about is like getting that 50 miler up on Strava. Like it's almost like social media for biking. And that's kind of,
Yeah.
and kind of the big part of biking, isn't it? Like to get out way and explore and not worry. Like, so I think there can be some weird kind of incentives. So yeah, I would say if you had probably, I'm really going longer than this. This is supposed to be a lightning round and I'm just going on.
No, no, it's fun. I love
Yeah.
this. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, so we're going overrated there. I'm a big Strava guy myself, but to be fair, I don't pay for the fancy thing. So maybe if I did pay for the fancy thing, okay, founding a company, overrated, underrated.
I'm gonna say overrated
Ooh,
as a
okay.
founder. if you look at the general population. So I think Bill and I actually had an interesting talk about this today. I think most people probably are not set up to be entrepreneurs. It's
Totally
hard.
agree. Totally
It's
agree.
like it's hard.
It's very hard.
And I think there's a lot of like glamorization and of like, hey, I'm a founder, I do this and that. So again, for some people, it's amazing. If you just said, hey, I'm going to pick one person off the street and make them a founder, and is it going to make their life better or worse? I'd say for most people, it'd make their life worse. So for a select like 20%, maybe less, could be amazing. But I think it's also comes with not all the information up front.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. What gave you more gray hair? And you have a wonderful set of hair. It's not gray, but trolling motors or your right channel radios?
Oh, these are good questions, man. I'd probably say trolling motors.
Yeah.
Anytime you're shipping, like, the reason I sold that business relatively early was it just was, to be honest, it was not very good business. Low margins. You're shipping these like 70-pound boxes across the United States. Like shipping fees are super high. Things would break. It was nothing proprietary about it. It was all a SEO play. So definitely, I would say Trolling Motors was more of a gray hair creator.
I love it. What's your favorite e-commerce community outside of e-commerce fuel?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I would say Ecom Crew is really great. They have it's run by Mike Jackness and David Bryant. They have the community. Those are just two just awesome people, two amazing humans. So I'd probably say that Ecom Crew. They do a really good job of sharing what they know, taking care of their community members, helping them out one on one. Like,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, anyone who is a part of their community, they actually it's just like open email. Anytime you have questions, let me know. Um, which I think is super cool. So I'd say Ecom Crew.
I love that. Your favorite meal and why?
Ooh, favorite meal and why? I go with one of two things. Street tacos, good street tacos in Tucson are great, particularly
Yeah.
if they're with my family. That's always a good time. Uh, it's really hard to beat a ribeye steak
Yeah.
or like Wagyu tri-tip. I had that this last uh, summer for a special occasion. It was exceptionally good. So like well cooked, well barbecued meat or beef or street tacos.
I love it. Great choices. And we have fantastic both of those in Austin. You come out, we'll put you up. We'll put you
That
up.
thanks, man.
Best place to camp in the States?
Ooh. Oh, a lot of options here. Are we talking about backpacking or are we talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
like
Should have been. Let's do car camping because
car camping? Okay.
most people don't like to get into the backcountry, or if you have kiddos or if you have a dog, you can't take your dog. So car
Yeah.
camping.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I would have to say either Southern Utah,
Oh, for sure.
like when it's not a million degrees, so shoulder season, Southern Utah, or the California coast, like Central Coast or Central Coast, California. Spent some time there, Morro Bay area, Los Osos.
Hmm.
Some of the parks around there are just, you're right on the beach. They're just stunningly beautiful. I would say those two places.
Yeah, those are Southern Utah is just man. It is one of the most magnificent places I've been. Where I got to do the Zion Narrows top
Oh
down,
yeah.
and it's a really Southern Utah is spectacular. But to your point, don't go there when it's hot. It gets hot, and it's really unpleasant when you're humping a pack in 100-degree heat. It's not the path.
Yeah. Shoulder season is key.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, a few more. Favorite place travel to and why?
Ooh. I would say probably Argentina. Argentina is a pretty sweet country. They got it all. They got mountains. They got delicious
Buenos Aires or
wine.
anywhere in particular?
I would say favorite place in Argentina. Buenos Aires is cool. I like the Patagonia region.
Oh
Like around El Chalten, that area, Fitzroy
yeah,
area. The place is
yeah.
pretty unbelievable. Yeah, I'd probably say Patagonia. It's or
That's
just Argentina in general.
the logo skyline, yeah, for Patagonia. That's the mountain tips, right?
I think it might
the
be actually.
area. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, yeah. That's so cool. The Fitzroy, kind of all that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew, you made it through. Last question. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
This is a tough one.
I
Okay,
wonder if I
could
can give
have-
you one answer. You keep asking me for like,
No, this is great. This is one of my favorites. I love it.
your editor is going to have like 4 hours of work here to get this down to a manageable amount of time.
No, people signed up for this. They love you. They know we bring the heat all the time with our guests. Okay, if you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would they be? So you have a table of 4. You're at one seat. You can invite three other people. Who would they be?
Dang, man. That is a tough one. Teddy Roosevelt,
Ooh,
just kind of an
great
all-around
pick. One of my
badass guy.
idols. One of my idols.
A really cool guy. Jesus.
Yep.
He's Jesus. Who would be the third? We'll put Ernest Shackleton in there, the dude, the explorer who went down to Antarctica. His boat got caught in the ice. He had this insane trip, like just unbelievable, mind-exploding trip to free his men. Interesting explorer, dude. So I'll put those 3 guys on there.
Ooh, that's a fun dinner. That's a fun.
Yeah.
Andrew, you made it through. You made it through the rapid fire.
Amazing.
Incredible.
I like your rapid fire. As someone who also does these with hosts on or guests on my podcast, those are really good. Are they the same? Well, obviously you customize some of them, but do you have kind of like the set for most people?
There's I guess you would call rubric, but for the most part, it's usually customized to the guest. Like we'll keep the overrated, underrated, favorites kind of stuff, but there'll be some nuance for each guest. Yeah, absolutely.
I really like that, man. Well done.
It's fun. Thank you. Yeah. Andrew, tell us more about Ecom Fuel. How can people get involved? This time is yours.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I'd say first and foremost, you're listening to a podcast. If you like e-commerce, if you like podcasting, probably the easiest way to get plugged in is just through the e-commerce Fuel podcast. So I've been doing it for it for a while now. Thank you. It's still learning a lot, but it's fun. We geek out about e-commerce. We also geek out about a lot of the building an amazing life alongside a business. Wherever you get podcasts, and then the community is kind of the heartbeat of what we do. It's a community for 7 to 8 figure store owners. So we have about 1,100 members these days. We do a lot of events. We're doing, I think, 6 or 7 events this year. We've got one in Austin coming up in the fall. We've got one in Salt Lake in May, ECF Live coming up. They're all member-driven events. So, and the heart of the online community is the forum. We have an online message board that's super active, 100, 150 comments a day. And lots of stuff going on in there. So if you're a 7 or 8 figure store owner and you want to have some community for people where you can get, answers to super niche questions about very esoteric stuff related to e-commerce, or just meet a bunch of other cool people doing similar stuff, would love to have you. So ecommercefuel.com.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really up there. I mean, in my opinion, top tier, as good as it gets. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. You have absolutely blown away. I knew when I saw this on the calendar, I knew it was going to be incredible, and I can't wait to get this out to the listeners. Thank you again, my friend. You're the man. And then if you do want to get involved in Triple Whale some more, try triplewhale.com. You can sign up there. You can also follow us on the Twitters at Triple Whale. And then we also have a fantastic newsletter called Whale Mail that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday. You can just subscribe right on our Twitter profile. Again, Andrew, thanks so much. We need to get like a DTC or e-com backpacking event together and just go rage into the wilderness, because I am jealous of the van in specific. I had these camper van. I had an Element for a really long time, and
nice.
It's a great. Yeah, we'd camp in it. We just take that thing all-wheel drive. I mean, I would joke it's like Crocs, where it's like the aesthetic is terrible, but the utility is so high. Like that car is so well built, man. You have suicide doors. You have a tailgate. Everything's you can just wash down the inside. It is a fantastic car. But with that being said, Andrew, thanks so much. Go sign up for E-commerce Fuel. Go download the podcast. Go follow Andrew on the Twitters. Fantastic human. And thanks again for the time, Andrew. It's been just an absolute honor and a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a blast. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, everybody. That is number 23 in the books. We'll see you on the flip.